Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. These are the wives of Henry VIII. It is a common misconception that Henry VIII murdered his wives because of their failure to produce a son. And his obsession with a male heir is shown in many popular culture things such as the Tudors and the other Boleyn girl. And while there is some truth, that is not the reason for his 6 marriages. And I'm not saying that he didn't cause the death of some of his wives, but this was not the reason. I have studied this subject for a number of years, and I will primarily be using Antonia Fraser's The Wives of Henry VIII to correct this misconception. And in truth, even after he was driven mad, Henry VIII was a romantic. He married all of his wives with the exception of the 4th for love. Catherine of Aragon was his first wife, and combined with his affair with Anne Boleyn, perhaps the most important, because this set the precedent for the remaining wives. Her failure with sons was shown in a lot of different series. But what they failed to mention is that she did in fact give birth to sons, they just did not survive their infancy. He also had a bastard son with one of her ladies-in-waiting, Elizabeth Blount. If he hadn't met Anne Boleyn, he probably would have stayed with Catherine and made the bastard son his heir. But the fact of the matter is, he did meet Anne Boleyn, and she changed history when he moved heaven and earth to make her his 2nd wife. Anne Boleyn was considered a woman of no particular beauty, but she was passionate, intelligent, and had a fiery temper. The Tudors depict Henry's relationship with Anne beginning when he was a young man. This is entirely false. In fact, by modern standards, his affair with Anne could be considered a midlife crisis of sorts. She told the king the one thing he had never been told before, and that was no. Henry wanted Anne, and she refused to be his mistress. She said that she would not sleep with him until he made her his wife. So he decided that God was punishing him for marrying his brother's wife, even though the marriage was not consummated, and that he would get rid of Catherine. Now, this was not his reason for getting rid of Catherine. It was an excuse so he could marry Anne. He went to the church, and they, after years of deliberation, refused his annulment. Then, under influence of Anne, Henry created the Church of England, became the supreme head, and gave himself a divorce. Catherine of Aragon ended up dying alone in a cold, damp castle of illness. Anne was crowned and made his queen, and gave birth to Elizabeth I. But soon Anne lost her luster. Following the pattern starting with Anne and Catherine, he set his eyes on one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting, Jane Seymour. He soon fell in love with Jane, and because great pains had been taken to make Anne's marriage valid, he could not simply get rid of her on a technicality like he had with Catherine. So she was falsely charged with accusations of adultery with several of the male courtiers, including her own brother, and was executed for treason. There are rumors that he married Jane Seymour the day of Anne's execution. And she is often depicted as a Disney princess of sorts, which is not true. She was just as manipulative as the others. She was his 3rd wife, and she gave him the son that he desired. This further shows that he was not marrying these women for a son. He already had that. But she died of childbed fever soon after. His next marriage was to Anna of Cleves, a Protestant German princess. This was a political marriage, and the first one that was not made out of love, and he absolutely repulsed her, or she repulsed him. And he soon made an annulment for her, although later she became his loved sister and would often play chess with him. While he was still married to Anna of Cleves, Henry fell in love yet again, this time with Kitty Howard, a distant cousin of Anne Boleyn, who was young and not very intelligent, and Henry was old and, well, gross by this point, and she did commit adultery and was also executed for treason. His final wife was Catherine Parr. She became a loving mother and brought in all of his children into a single household, and she was the one that survived his reign and was able to marry the man that she truly loved, who happened to be the brother of Jane Seymour. So hopefully Henry VIII no longer seems like a wife-killing machine, although he did cause the death of a few of them. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. What is important to remember is that he really did love 5 of these women, and all 6 of them held his affection at least some point. And even if you have the love of a king, especially when it comes to Henry VIII, it is important to remember, as Anne's uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, said, "The anger of the prince means death." Thank you.